Hello and welcome to Plus TV Africa's Democracy Day special. I am Kayode Ladindi.
And I'm Mariana Cohn. We're here to mark Democracy Day 3 years after President Muhammadu Buhari declared June 12 as a new day to celebrate our democracy.
Quite interesting. You know, just like 3 years ago, I remember that over time there has been clamor for the day to be declared as Democracy Day as against the May 29 when power changed hands. That was like 22 years ago.
Yes.
But we are looking at 28 years after what that day stood for. I'm sure both of us were alive then, right?
We were, obviously. We were, but most importantly, we're also not just talking about that day, June 12, what happened, how power did not necessarily go how Nigerians were expecting it, but then we're talking about 28 years later. How has Nigeria's democracy evolved? Have we changed for the better or have we retrogressed?
Quite a big question, because some would say what we've had so far is civilian rule and not democracy. But trust me, a lot of our experts are going to throw more light on that, tell us how far we've gone in terms of our security, in terms of our economy, in terms of the most important, which is actually the security, because we wonder how we have gotten to this level where there's so much insurrection, so much unrest in different parts of the country.
Yes, and we must not fail to understand that some of these, insecurities are fueled by ethnic tensions.
That's true.
And this is the most that Nigeria has experienced in all of its life as a country.
Yeah, and trust me, we will get started with very, very important one, that is the rule of law. What defines the democracy definitely has to do with the rule of law. And let me not mention the name of the guest. By the time we come back, we will see that the person is fit and proper to explain to us what rule of law is all about under the democracy.
All right, well, let's kickstart the show. When we come back from this break, we'll talk about the law that governs us as a people.
Welcome back. It's still the June 12th special. President Olusegun Obasanjo took his oath of office under the law when he became president in 1999. This did not translate to him leading with the respect for the rule of law. He constantly meddled with legal processes. His successor, Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, was praised for upholding the rule of law. Yar'Adua ensured Supreme Court judgment refunding Lagos State old federal allocations was enforced. He also enforced the court's judgment declaring Peter Obi the governor of Anambra State.
Well, Goodluck Jonathan had relatively good records, but the President Muhammadu Buhari's record has been filled with numerous abuse of court orders. Judges have been ignored on at least 40 occasions. State security officials have invaded a court to arrest an activist, Omoyele Sowore, and also invaded the home of judges.
And to do justice to this, we have Muiz Banire is here to talk about 28 years after and the rule of law. He is a senior advocate of Nigeria, and currently we also describe him as an activist. Just for record, he was one-time commissioner of Lagos State for Environment and also commissioner for Transportation. At a later time, he was also the national legal advisor of the ruling All Progressive Congress. Welcome, Dr. Muiz Banire.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, good to have you. Now, let's take a look at the idea of democracy and the idea of rule of law. We believe that these are supposed to be Siamese twins, and there was a situation with our own country.
Well, our own country, in the first instance, maybe I should start by saying that what you said is correct in your introductory remark, to the extent that can we really say we have a democracy in Nigeria as a date, particularly since 1999? Well, I share the position of those who believe that the best we've succeeded in achieving so far is a civil rule and not democracy in the proper context. So if you take it from that particular position, rule of law, however, has only one language. And it is that everybody must do things in accordance with the dictate of the law. It's as simple as that. So if we pitch it from that, democracy not yet here, rule of law is there with us, but to what extent have we been upholding there? I say we are still far off. That's my submission. We are still far off.
Well, sometime early this year, there was that confusion as to which should take precedence or which should come as priority in the country, knowing that we have been facing some form of insecurity over since last year into 2021. The president did say something about the fact that, you know, the rule of law, yes, does have its positioning, but then national interest does supersede. It became a subject of, you know, conversation and debate all across the country. As someone who's an officer of the law, do you agree with Mr. President's position as to national interest superseding the rule of law? I'm guessing the rule of law works with the
I don't subscribe to that position at all. I believe that at no point in time must we subordinate the rule of law to any other consideration. Even within the context of national security, there are so many ways to skin a cat. You can still arrive at your destination using the instrumentality of the law. The moment you displace the rule of law, it becomes rule of man. And the net effect is simple. You are entering into anarchy. You become a jungle city. It's as simple as that. So under no circumstance must we allow the rule of law to be displaced. So I do not share that position.
You say under no circumstances should we allow
subordinate.
Yeah, but are we allowing it, or is it happening under our watch? Because
well,
again,
it's happening.
We do not have the powers to allow or disallow, do we?
No,
at this point?
Yeah, it's happening. I'm just telling you conceptually what it should be. But in terms of being pragmatic, well, it's happening. What are we doing about it? I think that should be the question. What are we doing about it?
Okay, Dr. Banira, before we look at what we are doing about it, you gave a very fundamental issue. And for some people, they believe that the political class played into the hands of the former military generals. In 1999, we had a former military general who took over power, and we have some kind of respite when we had a full civilian, that talking about Yaradua, and we also had Goodluck Jonathan, and we are back to a former general. Is this what is responsible to this unsatisfactory, if I can use that word, transition that we've experienced so far?
Well, I suspect so. I suspect so, because they've been living a regimented life all the while, and suddenly they find themselves in an environment that is not a regimented environment. The tendency naturally is to want to apply the regimented or regimental rules. So for me, I believe that we must have somebody who is devoid of that background. Insofar, you see, once a soldier is always a soldier, and will ever remain a soldier. There's nothing you can do about that. So I share again that position that we certainly must move away from people with those military background to somebody who is a civilian and accustomed to the basic rules of civility.
How do we move away from it? Because we're very good at placing the troubles and the problems of our country on the table and, you know, pushing that discourse. But what do we do in solving it? So let me start by talking about the El Zakzaky situation, the former NSA boss, this Moyole Sowore case. These are clear examples of the rule of law not being adhered to. And we do have a constitution where there's so many laws that, in fact, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of, adhering to these laws. But it seems that we have a government that seems to pick and choose when to obey the law, when we, the people, should obey the law and when they should obey the law. But we are in the democratic dispensation. We claim to be in one. How do we get to make sure that our public officials adhere to the rule of law and do not pick and choose when they should, adhere to it?
But that's a long talk. A long one.
Let's keep it short and simple.
I will struggle. In the first instance, to do this, you need an enlightened populace. Our people must know their rights, and they must know where the obligations are. Up to now, we do not have that. So the first thing that I will advocate is that we need to educate and enlighten our people about the tenets of the rule of law, what the implications are. Until our people appreciate that, that's when they can react appropriately to any violation of the rule.
Whose job is it to do this educating, aside from the media? Please don't say the media.
Well, it's all of us. I would say all of us, particularly those who are enlightened, to be able to enlighten or educate those who are not. So everybody is involved in this war. We cannot limit it to the government. We cannot limit it to the media. The traditional rulers are there. The NGOs are there. The civil society organizations are there. The teachers are even there in the classroom. There. Everybody is involved. We are all stakeholders in the Nigeria project. And we need to bring this again borders on institution. You know, the rule of law is what gives back to an institution.
Very true.
And you cannot have an institution without the rule of law. So if the institution, one thing we have, and I can say without contradiction in Nigeria, is that we practically do not have institution, much like strong institution. We practically do not have.
Let alone the strong one.
Yes. The reality of the matter is that institutions, you can remember, picture, cast your mind back to the Trump last days in America, how the rule of law played out, how institutions functioned. You can't. I've said this severally. We don't have institutions. That's the beginning, and that's the bane of our trouble. And I give you a good instance. I remember when Magu was not confirmed by Senate based upon the report of the DSS, Department of State Security, and people started talking, people, journalists, strangely, who should be enlightened, saying that why should DSS be writing against a nominee of the presidency? DSS is an institution on its own. It can even write against the president of the country.
Dr. Banire, I want us to stay on the institution because you've touched the kernel of the issue. But before then, I just want us to clear the air, because when you came up with that position that let's try non-military background set of politicians, I want to believe that you are part of the political class. And we have governors now who have refused to grant autonomy to local government, the top tier of government. As we speak, probably you might give us an insight to what the Constitution really says about these tiers of government and the constitutionality, or is this a good call for us to have a new constitution as being debated?
You see, the problem is that the challenge of autonomy for the local government is not the fault of the governor, it's the fault of the National Assembly, cum the presidency. The law as it stands now is largely ambivalent. It's not on the issue of autonomy for the local government. Attempt has been made in the last two assemblies to truly give them or confer on them full autonomy. But I tell you for free that during the Saraki days, I know I was a consultant to the constitutional amendment process.
That's true.
And we came out purely with a full provision amendment that will confer autonomy on the local government. But that was frustrated by the State House of Assembly, usually through the governors.
Very true.
Because we needed 2/3 of them. We couldn't get the 2/3 to pass it out. That's number one. Number two, again, is the reality that the president lamented yesterday or 2 days ago and said, look, our local government has collapsed totally. The governors are just taking the money meant for the people. And so everybody, we are all engaging in this one, lamentation upon lamentation. But what are we doing about it? The reality is that we must force the National Assembly to act and act fast in this regard. And the president is said to sign in into it to confer full autonomy on the local government. That's number one. Number two, on the second leg of your question, I do not believe in the amendment process. I believe I've written on it in my column. I said this is just another scam.
What do you believe in?
I believe in total replacement, and I traced the constitutional history of Nigeria from 1992.
But the Deputy Senate President said this is not part of the mandate, that this is not achievable.
Why is it not achievable?
Well, because he said that
it's ignorance.
Well, he says that the constitution, for a new constitution to be drawn, we have to amend this one to include a clause that says that we can draw a brand new constitution.
That is not true. That is ignorant. That is totally ignorant with due respect to the advocacy.
So you're insinuating that our lawmakers don't know their jobs?
Of course. What are their qualities? So please, let's leave that one, because if we go that direction again, you'll be making me to go into descend to an area you don't want me to go into.
Okay, so let's stay on the Constitution.
Yes, let's stay on the Constitution. The Constitution allows you to do amendment. The same Constitution, there's something because you can amend something by way of repeal. Every day in this country, at all levels of government, we amend laws by way of repeal. You bring in a new one, and in that law, it repeals the old one. You don't need a new clause to do that one. What we have now is full of contradiction, a lot of unintelligible provisions. Like I said, a lot of ambivalent provisions. And it's so voluminous that it makes no sense at all. America is the biggest democracy we have in the world. Have you seen the Constitution of America? It's a pamphlet. It's not something as voluminous as this that is contradictory and conflicting all over the whole place. A lot of things that ought not to be in our constitution are in our constitution. We need to expunge more than 2/3 of what is in that constitution today. That is what is not making the constitution itself keep pace. You know, life is dynamic. The constitution is a living thing. The laws too are living things. They must keep pace with development and the dynamism of the society. But when you go and stock some of these things and you make under Section 9 the process of amendment practically impossible, then you are stultifying your own growth yourself. You are shooting yourself in the leg. I can give you a good illustration. The land use act we integrated into the constitution. Even in the land use act, when you open it, there is a portion sizable enough called transitional provision that was meant to just last for a short period. Now, since 1978 to date, nobody can do anything about it.
But Dr. Banire, I don't want us to forget that issue that Miriam talked about, talking about the constitution, the institution. Where is the problem? Is it the political will of the political class or the people allowing the institution to be stronger? We had a debate everywhere this morning about whose right it is to protest. You need permission from the police, and there is a judgment in relation to that you only need to inform the police. But we saw police telling people they cannot protest. So where does this strong institution lie? How do we build that strong institution?
Well, like I said, to a large extent, it's the function of ignorance.
By who now?
Yes, I was going to the operators to start with. The operators of most of the institutions are people that are not even conversant with the Bible that they are carrying. What is the Bible? The law setting them up. I can tell you without fear of contradiction, more than 90% of those who head the various institutions today have never for once sat down to even look at their law. For once, since they were appointed, they just got appointment to go there and ask the people there, what have you been doing? How have you been doing it? No, that's all. They don't even know their power. They don't know the extent, they don't know the scope. That's number one. Two, the people themselves are equally ignorant. That's why they cannot even enforce. They cannot raise issues, even where their rights are threatened or violated. They can't, because it's what you know that you agitate. If you don't know about it, you just keep quiet and just surrender to the will of God. And this is what is happening. So for me, that's why I say education and enlightenment of the people, both the stakeholders and even the operators, is very critical. The law has provided for this. The various laws that set up institutions, we always tell you, these are your functions, these are your power, these are what and what.
These are your limitations.
Those are the things that will govern you, and no other human being, no matter how superior the person is. But what do you find today?
Well, before we go, because we're almost out of time, finally, I just want to talk about your constituency, the NBA. Every time I have a lawyer here, they say, oh, these legislators don't know their job. What is the NBA doing? What are the senior advocates of this country doing to push and somewhat put a burden on these legislators that you have claimed do not know their jobs? Pointing them in the right direction, because if they do know that these people who are learned gentlemen know their worth and they are pushing for certain things, I'm guessing that they would not have an excuse, as opposed to a populace who do not necessarily understand the Constitution, as the lawyers do.
Well, I'm aware that the NBA is playing its role. We do from time to time tell them our position on all the issues. But of course, it takes somebody who is interested, even knowing, to even appreciate the point NBA makes. Most of the time, they make publication the right opinion they send to them, but they just ignore them most of the time. So there's little you can do. The only people that can correct this anomaly are the electorate. And that is when you are able to do a lot of things. In other words, reform your electoral process. The electoral process and the system, as it is right now, cannot give us the best set of hands that will paddle the affairs of this country into any success. So we need to revisit that completely.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Muiz Banire. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria, and he's been our guest on the show today. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful time. We'll take a short break, and when we come back,
we're going to be talking about the economy. Yes,
that's true.
Very important, because the Naira seems to be taking a deep dive. What is responsible for that? We'll get to find out. Stay with us.